Get rid of my vacation? Have fun replacing me. I worked at a company that gave out exorbitant amounts of vacation. Anyone who worked there for 25 years received 8 weeks of vacation and 2 weeks of personal time. This was a family-owned company, but rather large, and we ran 3 shifts totaling 250 people. Enter Jimmy. Jimmy was a grizzled old man, and he had started at the company when he was 20. Now he was 63 and gave 0 craps. He also knew how to make a specific part for our product that only him and one other higher up in the office knew. One day, the plant owner comes in and announces he's selling to a corporation. He's older and ready to retire, and he promises there's not going to be much change and wishes us all well. The new company comes in and immediately goes after the great benefits we had. The first thing they do is cut everyone's max vacation down to 4 weeks and do away with personal time. Anyone who's maxed out had until December 31st of the year to use it up, and they wouldn't pay it out. They then go into the office and clean house, firing anyone who's close to retirement, including Jimmy's backup. They also do away with one very important rule. You no longer had to get vacation approved, you could just call in and take it. Jimmy is pissed, and they know it. They realize he's the only one in the building that can do his job now, so they hire a new kid for him to train, most likely to permanently replace him. So Jimmy does what anyone would do. He calls in the first training day for the new hire and lets us know he's going to use all of the paid time off at once and takes 10 weeks off. We had a backstock of parts he made, but it was too unnerving. For 10 weeks, Jimmy went and applied for other jobs, found one, and started. Fast forward 10 weeks, and it's the day Jimmy's supposed to return, and he doesn't. For 2 days, they try calling him and even go to his house, and he's nowhere to be found. Finally, on day 3, he calls and resigns, and they lose their crap. The parts he made are specialized and patented by the original founder. You can't just hire someone off the street to make them. What eventually happened was they had to contact the original owner to come teach new hires how to make them. And when he found out all they had done, it pissed him off. And last I heard, he charged them a 7-figure contract to teach them how to produce parts, and they had to pony up or close down. Moral of the story, don't mess with people's vacation time. I'm really not sure what the company that came in and bought them expected to happen, alright? Usually when you come in and you ask everybody why they love to work for the company, those are the things you cut last. They said, oh, you love your vacation time? Sweet, we'll get rid of it first. Also, all the old people that have been extremely loyal, deuces, we don't need you anymore. No wonder it ended up going to crap, dude. I'm sorry, but having to pay the original owner over $1 million to come in and fix it is the least you could do, let's be honest. Don't mess with Jimmy's vacation time.
I'm getting quiet now. Lay low when you reach zone, piping down, making out, stack the
Alright guys, what's going on? It's your boy Scrub here, back again with another video. Today we're going to be looking at the subreddit r/MaliciousCompliance. This has been suggested to me to do, so I figured I would make it so it's entertaining to y'all, because you guys have been really enjoying the Reddit videos recently. So, you know, if you appreciate the new subreddit, let me know in the comment section down below. Feel free to press the like button, and without further ado, let's get into some malicious compliance. Manager forces me to get a doctor note despite it being illegal to do so, and the doctor writes him a passive-aggressive note signing me off for 2 weeks instead of 2 days just to teach him a lesson. When I was in my early 20s, I worked at a supermarket. I should note that I was a pretty reliable employee. I was never late. In fact, I often got in early and I rarely called in sick. At the time this happened, I had not called in sick for 9 months, and even then, the manager had sent me home. I had been up all night, swinging between burning hot and freezing cold, and was obviously feverish, and I'd been throwing up at both ends, to say the least. At one point, at about 2 a.m., I was on the toilet with my head in the sink, utterly miserable. I must have passed out, because next thing I knew, I was lifting my head off the sink, and it was 7 a.m. I was due to start work at noon that day, but that just obviously was not going to happen. So I called up the manager. Let's call him Steve. Steve was known for being an a-hole. He never believed anyone who called in sick except for his best friends, usually other managers, never us lowly staff, and often called in sick himself. A lot of the time we knew it because he was hungover and not actually sick, and the conversation went as follows. Hey Steve, I'm sorry, I can't come in, I'm sick. Oh yeah, sick with what? I don't know, I think it might be the flu. I've been up all night long being sick and I have a fever. Don't be stupid. If you had the flu, you'd be completely knocked out. I need you. Come in or you're fired. I can't. I just told you I'm vomiting and I passed out. Either come in or bring a doctor's note or I guess you're fired. In the UK, you are legally allowed to self-certify for 5 days. That means you can tell your employer you are sick and you do not need a doctor's note. However, if you're sick for more than 5 days, then you need a note. And it's illegal to demand a doctor's note during the self-certify period. I knew this, but I was terrified. It was during the recession and I couldn't afford to lose my job. So I got myself dressed, almost passed out doing so, and then trudged to the doctor some 25 5 minutes away. I ended up sitting in the doctor's office for a little over an hour, which for a walk-in was pretty good, and I get to see the doctor and she's furious at me for coming in. You're not supposed to come to the doctors if you have the cold or the flu, and of course I knew I should be able to self-certify, and she told me that, saying I shouldn't be here and should have stayed home. I then explained what had happened with Steve and how he had threatened to fire me over this and how I just couldn't afford to lose my job. I was struggling as it is, and my doctor turns her anger towards my manager. She asked if I got sick pay from the company and I said yes. Well, if he wants a sick note, then I'll give him a sick note, the doctor said. Now, my manager just wanted a note confirming I was sick, but instead my doctor wrote something along the lines of, "Your worker has come into surgery because the manager has insisted that they come in spite of the fact that this is illegal and all employees are allowed to self-certify. Due to being forced to make this unnecessary and highly dangerous trip when the patient is ill and has a fever of 39 degrees Celsius and almost passed out in the waiting room, I am signing my name off for 2 full weeks to recover. Had blank been allowed to self-certify, as is the law, they might have only needed a few days. But due to straining themselves, they now require 2 full weeks, and they are not permitted to work until, and then the date of 2 weeks later." The doctor said she would have signed me off longer, but this was the longest she could do without requiring further evidence. So basically, instead of just being off for a few days, I was now signed off for 2 full weeks, and I'd be paid for it. I went to my place of work, and at which point one of the duty managers saw me and asked me what the heck I was doing to go home. I was obviously unwell, but I explained what happened, and they agreed to help me downstairs to Steve's office and went with me inside. I handed Steve the note, and he looked worried and tried to say, "I wasn't being serious about firing you." Well, gee, when you angrily growled down the phone, it sounded like it. The duty manager then declared that they were going to drive me home, and it was clear Steve wanted to argue, but had the sense to know he shouldn't. The duty manager then drove me home, made sure I was okay, and then went back to work where they informed our union rep of what happened. Steve had a disciplinary hearing where he was given a severe reprimand and a warning, and he tried to argue, saying he'd never said I'd be fired and I was lying, and decided to go to the doctor, but the duty manager said they heard him admit to it when he said to me that he really didn't mean it. I felt better after a few days and enjoyed my 2 weeks off, fully paid, and enjoyed the nice weather we had. Meanwhile, Steve was forced to work overtime because we were short-staffed, so thanks to the doctor, instead of being off for a few days, I ended up getting a nice 2 weeks paid vacation, and Steve was given a final warning, all because he insisted I go get a doctor's note. I never understood why my bosses would make me do this, dude. If I call and say I have a fever and you insist I go get a doctor's note, then I'm just gonna be off longer, and now I'm annoyed, you know? And in this situation, now you ended up costing the company a crap ton of money. 2 weeks paid vacation does sound pretty nice though, you know? He's on the beach in Spain. What are you doing to get time off? Well, my boss was a jerk. The doctor decided to work with me, and so now I'm getting paid for 2 weeks and can do whatever I want, so I decided to head somewhere tropical. You can't continue working from home because you go idle in the chat too often. As part of the plan to return to office post-COVID, my company has done a lot of redesignating who can permanently work from home, who can hybrid, etc. I really wanted to work from home full-time because I hate being in the office with a burning passion. It's distracting, it's a long commute, and there's no benefit to being there, so on and so forth. I'd just rather stay home. Well, we thought May was going to be going back to the office time because they started giving out new designations. I got designated as in office full time. It made no sense to me. I work on a team of 8 people, and each of us are in a different office somewhere in the country. I've literally never been to an in-person meeting or needed to do in-person work in the 3 years I've been here. Every single other person on my team got designated to work from home. So I brought it up with my boss and asked to work from home. When I started at this company and lived elsewhere, I got to work from home for 4 months before I moved. In the past 14 months, I've been at home as well. So 18 out of the 36 months I've been working from home. And what I was told is that I go idle in chat way too often to be trusted to work from home. Basically, we have a company-wide IM system that shows you as available, idle, or in a meeting. If you don't touch your keyboard for 5 minutes, you're shown as idle. So they've decided to use this as a measure for who is working and who isn't. The thing is, like many people in many types of jobs, I don't have crap to do for a full 8 hours every single day. The amount of work I have to do on a typical day takes 3 to 5 hours of actual attention, and there simply isn't something to do all the time. My performance numbers went up working from home. By all objective numbers, I'm a better worker at home. In fact, it shows that I don't flat out lead the team in, I come in second quite often. There isn't work to do that I'm neglecting or procrastinating. When something comes up, I simply do it until it's done or until I can't anymore due to waiting on someone else accounts, then stop. And I've done that method long enough that my work queue stays empty because I work to get my queue down to the point where when something comes up, I can just immediately do it and be done. But because I have other ways to spend my time in my downtime instead of messing around online at my cube pretending to be working, meaning I show idle more often, I'm a worse worker apparently. I was told if it weren't for that, they'd let me work from home. So I wrote a 6-line PowerShell script that virtually inputs the period key every 4 minutes that starts running every day at 8 a.m. and stops at 5 p.m. So now I literally never go idle. I do the same amount of work and still read books, watch TV, and play video games on the side, but I still have a shiny green check mark next to my name all day. Because of the COVID complications, they eventually said no going back until after Labor Day. I just had a meeting with my boss, and he said over this time they've noticed I go idle a lot less and than I used to, so they're changing my designation to work from home, all because of a little icon in some software. This concludes my TED Talk on why low to middle level managers are the dumbest, most useless, do-nothing position in all of corporate America. It's only so funny because they literally made a script to just put a period in every 4 minutes, and all of a sudden the bosses were like, "You're doing so much more work. Wow, you can afford to work from home. You're incredible." Like, oh my gosh, you bozos literally were making all of these decisions based solely upon the green check mark saying if they were active or not. I don't know, man. That just seems like not the best way to measure this. It's just kind of funny. Obviously, you know, if you can get all your work done in a shorter period of time and then go idle, it doesn't mean you're doing anything less, especially because this person proved they're doing the exact same output, but just showing up AFK a little bit less, and everyone's so impressed with their improvement. This is like those people that have multiple full-time jobs right now because they're like, wait, I can just, work for 3 companies because I can get all my work done fast. Hey, good for you, man. Hustle. Landlord advertises all of our company's equipment for sale to our competitors. Best follow our eviction to the letter. I work for a leisure company. Think soft play, indoor soccer, laser tag. Prior to the lockdown, managers and the big bosses were negotiating the renewal of the lease on one of the parks. Things were going smoothly, however, the landlords were difficult to contact. And then the 2020 crap hit the fan. All of our sites were closed and everything was thrown into a mess. Negotiations began to slip down the priority list, and nobody thought the landlord would push for an eviction for an expired lease during this period, especially because they were still paying the rent despite the site's closures and the closure of every business and restaurant in the immediate area. Well, we were wrong. A few days ago, we received a letter saying that we had 7 days to leave the premises and take everything with us. We are reminded that anything left in the building after 7 days will become the landlord's property. That's a very important line. Now, a lot of construction goes into installing our equipment into a new business, which makes emptying one even harder. At a lockdown with no staff and most businesses closed, it meant that saving much of our assets would prove to be extremely difficult. To lose a profitable site and all of its assets is definitely a blow to the company, but here's where it gets worse. A few days into our 7-day eviction, we find out that the landlord is advertising our park to our competitors. But he isn't offering just the building, he's offering all of our stuff pre-installed, ready to go, just needs branding. The landlord has evicted us from the property in an attempt to increase the rent and make a solid profit from our equipment installed because he thinks we won't be able to empty the park, and obviously this made us furious. And here is where the malicious compliance came in. We were told we had 7 days to move everything we owned out of the property, so that's exactly what we did. Local businesses from all around offered up free space to store our things, and a few people came back out of lockdown, and they all spent the rest of the weeks removing, selling, or destroying everything related to us, and we didn't even leave light fittings. In every other site vacation that I've ever seen, we always ended up leaving thousands of dollars of disco lights in the ceiling because they're too hard to get. We leave most of the construction in, as well as things like bars and kitchens that stay intact, but not this building. We ripped up the flooring we installed, tore down the walls that were not a part of the original structure, ripped apart the manager's office, and removed all of the artwork and lockers. The landlord now has to deal with every new deal he has been making being dead in the water and a large renovation bill to install new flooring, or a company willing to do it themselves like we were. And on top of it, lockdown has been extended another 4 weeks, so at least he has another 4 weeks without rent that we were paying and won't have any potential buyers. The silver lining is the assets we got out of the site have all been sold, and the lack of rent and additional income has helped the business and paid staff's wages. We handed in the keys, and it was probably one of the quickest handovers we ever had. The landlord clearly didn't want to make any kind of conversation, and there was an elephant in the room, but he said nothing about the lack of our equipment. Complications did arise when we went back to get various deposits, but he had no case to withhold the deposits from us as the building was in excellent shape. We conducted much of the maintenance work ourselves, so the building was in better condition than we found it, and we also cleaned up all the rubbish and dirt from the demolition. A very minor bit of pressing from our legal team, and we received everything owed back in full. The building is still vacant as yet, and we don't know of any potential buyers. Honestly, man, you kind of deserved this one too, bro. Trying to take advantage of evicting a business during COVID when there's literally nothing you can do and just hoping that they can't get all their property out of there. I mean, I think your biggest mistake was contacting their competitors, because listen, obviously business can be competitive, but I don't think anybody would be cool with that happening to them, so they probably let them know. Just in the future, man, don't evict people for shady reasons and try to steal all their stuff, man. Like, you owned the building and were getting paid. You had the pretty sweet arrangement already. No need to go the extra step and try to make their life miserable. I love that they ripped out literally everything. They're like, hey, usually we leave a ton of stuff, but not this guy. Literally, we took every nail out of the floorboards. We didn't care. We bought it, we took it. Either be fired or accept a massive pay cut. Okay, I'll take the firing. I worked for a company for 14 years. I loved working there for 12 of those years. There were two main parts of the job. The first was the sales side of things, and it was always away from the office and the customer's location. It involved quite a bit of driving and a couple occasions of flying abroad to work face-to-face with the customers to deliver a high-quality product. We weren't the cheapest, but we were the superior product, and I was the best employee when it came to delivering it. I consistently got rave reviews from customers for my personal style when it came to delivering the product and executing the vision. And I got a huge amount of repeat business and got a lot of new business through word of mouth with customers recommending the company based on their experiences with me. The second part was the office side. This was my weaker side. I hated cold calling potential customers with numbers I found in the phone book. When it came to answering the phone and speaking to potential customers who initiated contact, I was fine, but I wasn't great at making the calls. This was my only real not great part of it. In the office, no one really asked me to make any calls. Instead, I prepared product, designed new product, trained new staff members, and I was also the problem solver helping out whenever and wherever, falling in or filling in for sick employees whenever I could. I liked the owner and I liked the manager and I liked all the staff who were around me, and all in all it was a great job that I was really good at and took a lot of pride in. The company had started doing so well that the owner had expanded over the 12 years since I started working. I joined about 3 months after we started, so I'd been a part of the expansion, worked out of the nearest office, but often traveled to other areas to train staff. I was loaned out, as it were, to other companies to help train their staff, and at one point I was a guest lecturer at a university teaching medical students how to deliver complicated explanations to people who don't have the base knowledge that you yourself do. After 12 years, I was on a decent salary, not massive, but I was happy. And then the owner decided to sell off part of the company. He was selling the area where my local office was, and he told me he'd love me to remain as his employee, but I would need to work a different route. This was either required me to move or to quadruple my daily commute. The other option was to remain working at my current office with a new boss, and I chose the second option. Before the new owner bought the company, she worked alongside the staff for a couple weeks to see how we operated. This was before any of us knew she was about to buy the company, and as far as we knew, she was another employee, and she was just shadowing us to learn. She came with me in the assignment and saw my abilities. When the sale was announced and we were informed that she was the owner, everyone was surprised. She made some sweeping staff changes. Our manager left to start her own business since the new owner was also going to be the manager, and a lot of staff were let go. The secretary, myself, and a couple new hires were kept on, and the new hires were on the lowest wages, not salaries. Anyone who had got to a decent level was let go, and since almost everyone was on 0-hour contracts, she was able to do this. While technically it wasn't a new company for the customers, it was the same old business. The company had the same trading name. The only real difference was that there was a new owner and the registered business name was now different, but as far as the customers were concerned, nothing had changed. My job for the first few months after the sale was to train up the remaining staff to replace the experienced members who had been let go. I recommended a couple of new hires who I had experienced working with in the past, and I was open and honest with the owner and let her know that one of them was a close friend and one was my girlfriend. Both were more than qualified to work and happy to join. My friend had recently come back to the country after a year of traveling, while my girlfriend could only work during school holidays. The owner gave them both interviews and hired them since we needed the staff. Over the next 2 years, business started to fall. The reason was simple. The new owner decided to try and maximize profits by increasing prices while decreasing the quality of the product. For new customers, this wasn't noticeable. They just thought we were expensive and the product wasn't the best. But for old customers who had been with us for 10 years, they noticed immediately. They were being charged more and were receiving far less for worse quality. So the owner doubled down and increased prices again. And 95% of our old customers left us. New customers never became repeat customers, and complaints skyrocketed. Whilst all this was going on, our staff turnover rate was ridiculous. People left after a few months when they realized the minimum wage they were being paid wasn't worth it. Under the old owner, we made our average hourly wage for new employees around 2.5 times the minimum wage. This made people care about their jobs and want to keep it. My girlfriend quit, but my friend remained but was looking for something new. Then I got a phone call. The owner needed me to come to the office. It was unexpected because I had just finished working on location with a customer, and my next customer was in 2.5 hours, and it was a half-hour drive away. The office was about an hour and 10 minutes away from both locations. If I drove back to the office, I would have about 5 minutes before I had to leave. My mileage was paid above my regular salary, so I was saving the company money by doing this. And also, parking was a nightmare around the second location, so I intended to get there as earlier as possible to find parking and read a book. The manager didn't care. She needed me to return to the office. So I did, and I arrived back to be handed a letter by the owner informing me of disciplinary meeting to take place in a couple days' time and that I needed to bring a witness along if I desired. This knocked me for 6. I was the best employee, and I read through her list of complaints about my performance and started to work on my defense. At the meeting, I declined to have a witness and instead decided to record the audio of the meeting on my phone without informing her. Where I live, this is legal and I didn't need consent. The boss's witness was her friend who she had met at yoga and hired for an office role, firing the secretary who had been there long before the takeover. Every point she raised, I could counter, and they ranged from the week, "You were unavailable to work for a week in August. I booked a week's holiday so I could attend my cousin's wedding on the other side of the country and turned it into a holiday," to the straight up pathetic, "You were late for work on the 12th of May. Is that the day my car broke down and I called the office to let you know? I don't know." I do. Here's the receipt from the garage dated May 12th. To downright lies. This one I can't write a quote, but basically she accused me of gross misconduct for breaking health and safety laws in the way I was delivering a product for a customer. I hadn't broke the health and safety laws, and I knew exactly what I was doing since, as I've mentioned already, I'd been doing this for 14 years at this point. She had witnessed me do it multiple times and had never mentioned it before because it's not an issue. She even had me train the staff in this specific delivery method because it wasn't an issue. She finished her list by telling me that she doesn't want to lose me, but she can't justify keeping such a bad employee at my current salary. And I had 2 choices. I could either sign a 0-hours contract and work for minimum wage, or she could fire me with 2 weeks' notice. I countered that she would have to give me 12 weeks' notice since my contract guaranteed me 1 week's notice for every year of employment up to a maximum of 12. She argued that I'd only been her employee for 2 years since before I worked with the previous owner, and I informed her that how the business takeover had run, it counts as continuous employment. I quoted the exact law and code that backed me up, and she asked for a 30-minute meeting in the break to let me think about the offer. She went to call her lawyer. When she came back, she informed me that since she was firing me for gross misconduct, she didn't have to give me any notice at all, and if I wanted to remain and move on the 0-hours contract, I could do that today, but if I didn't, then she'd have to fire me. But because she was nice, she would give me the 2 weeks notice. I asked for a couple hours to go home and think, and she allowed this. I knew the reason she wanted me to remain for the 2 weeks was because one of our few remaining bigger customers were set to have a product delivery from me in the meantime. They would only work with me, and the owner had tried to send other staff in my place on several occasions, and each time there had been problems. It wasn't the staff's fault, it was just a very difficult delivery for a specific customer that needed to be perfect, and as a result, they would only deal with me. I called the office and spoke to the owner. I declined the offer of a 0-hour contract and said I'd be leaving. She then said she was giving me my 2 weeks notice, and I declined the notice and informed her that if I'm being fired for gross misconduct, I can't be relied upon to safely deliver the product, and therefore, it'd be best for everyone if I didn't return to work. She panicked and said she needed me for those 2 weeks, and I feigned ignorance and let her know that I was just thinking about what's best for the company, and after all, you can't have unsafe staff delivering product to your customers. However, if she wanted to rethink the gross misconduct accusation, then I would work for my 12-week notice, and those were her options, 0 weeks or 12, and she chose 12. For those 12 weeks, I worked the same way I had for 14 years. I didn't coast, I didn't slack, I didn't badmouth the company on my way out. I continued to train the new staff, and I continued to deliver the product in my own personal, exceptional way, and I got in touch with a lawyer who's a specialist in employment law. For those 12 weeks, she barely spoke to me, and she resented the fact that I knew my legal rights and didn't just believe her lies. She hated the fact that I could defend myself, and she was petty. She accidentally dropped my mug in the kitchen, breaking it. And most petty of all, she paid for every single member of staff in the office to have a spa day except me. I was asked to work my day off to answer the phone while everyone else was being pampered. Nobody knew I hadn't been invited until they arrived at the spa and I wasn't there. Here's the thing, I'm a big fat bearded guy. I have no interest in a spa day. If she had offered it to me, I would have thanked and declined the offer. But by pointedly excusing me, she was making herself look bad, and for the last 2 weeks, I was training up my friend to take over for me. At the end of the 12 weeks, my final day came around, and the owner had nothing planned, not so much as a card after 14 years. The office assistant manager who had become a friend got me some presents, but had to give them to me once the boss was gone for fear of reprisal. The day after my final day, 2 things happened. The first was my friend who I'd been training up to replace me quit. He was on a 0-hour contract, so required no notice. He was unhappy with her treatment of me and was unhappy that she expected him to do my previously salaried job for minimum wage. He hadn't informed me of his plans to leave, and I only learned about it when he knocked on my door in the middle of the day when he should have been at work and let me know. The second was the owner received a letter informing her that I was bringing legal proceedings against her for unfair dismissal. I had arranged this with my lawyer to be delivered the day after my final day, and according to the office assistant, she went pale and started crying before leaving to call her lawyer. She refuted my claims for unfair dismissal, said it was gross misconduct, and tried to come up with more reasons for firing me, but the truth was that the company was making less money because of the business practices, and I was the highest and only salary. I had evidence that I was a great employee. I had evidence that she had asked me to move to a 0-hour contract, and she had initially tried to deny this since the gross misconduct fabrication makes no sense if she wanted me to stay. But once my lawyer provided her with a transcript of the entire meeting along with a copy of the recording, she knew it was over. Still, she let the case drag on for over a year, and I think she hoped that the legal fees would lead to me dropping the case, but little did she know my lawyer was working on a no-win, no-fee basis while hers weren't, and she ended up settling out of court. The office assistant, who had become a friend, quit a couple months after I left because she hated how I was treated and didn't feel safe working for an untrustworthy boss. Several former customers contacted me personally to inquire why I was no longer there because apparently the owner was telling them that I just quit. I had informed them I had been fired for cost-cutting reasons and they moved their business elsewhere, and several offered me jobs. One went so far as to offer me a part-time job and pay for me to attend college to earn a degree required for them to hire me full-time. This was a lovely offer, but they were one of the customers who were a bit too far away to commute and I wasn't ready to move. In the end, I found a new job in a different industry where a lot of my skills transferred over, currently earning more than I was, working less hours for better owners. The business is floundering. COVID left the new owner desperate for cash and she canceled orders but refused to refund customers, citing an act of God clause in the contracts. The business reviews have tanked and most of the staff left. The business is still afloat, but barely. I'll just never understand buying a business that has been successful for multiple decades and then turning around and firing every single person that has worked there and made it successful. You know, maybe that's why I'm not some genius out here acquiring companies, but I feel like the reason you want to buy the company in the first place is because of its performance, and the performance is because of the workers. You think you can just slap anyone else in the role of the person that's making the sales and have the exact same result? Dude, I don't know what to tell you. Especially if they've been there for 14 years, I feel like it's better to be nice than to make up a reason to sue them and end up in a wrongful termination lawsuit. HR tried to get rid of my dad right before he was able to get his pension. My father worked for a Forbes 500 company since the 70s, moved up the ranks as a software engineer in management, has patents for the company that saved it millions of dollars, and he's almost got to pension age, and suddenly HR is trying to make his life miserable. He noticed this trend was happening to some of his coworkers when they were getting close to 60 as well. HR lady calls him into the office and says he was not punching in and out at the correct time, and my father, an engineer, is very, very detail-oriented and knew these were false accusations and asked them to prove it. They came back a week later and couldn't prove it, and he said, "Of course you can't. I've been driving the corporate carpool bus from a major city 40 miles away for 15 years, and I always have 16 witnesses on my clock-in time and have never been late." The HR lady came back a week later and said they had to fire him for letting people into the building without badging. He asked to see when and where he was letting someone into the building without badging, and they show that they held the door for his best friend who had also been working there since the 70s, who had his foot cut off after diabetes and was in a wheelchair. Prior to this, my dad took the chief of security out for lunch and told him about how the company wanted to leave before he got the pension, so he got footage of his own. My dad said, "That's interesting. You're gonna fire me for holding the door for my best friend after his foot was amputated and he's in a wheelchair? Fine, then I hope you fire the CEO and yourself as well," and then showed the footage of her holding the door for his friend and the CEO doing it as well, and he ended up staying until he got his pension. Why are you gonna try to rob the dude that, has saved you millions of dollars and gotten patents for the company, man? I just don't understand it. If you're a Fortune 500 company, you're literally rolling around in money, literally could fill a swimming pool up and swim in it. I just don't understand why you're gonna try to make up reasons to fire a dude that's, done a lot for you. Just let him take his pension. Why are you gonna try to rob him of the retirement? Honestly, man, I feel like you did the best move ever by getting footage of everyone else holding the door too. They were flabbergasted, gobsmacked, jaw dropped when he pulled that out. Anyways, guys, I think that's gonna do it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy the video, I'd really appreciate you taking a second to press the like button. Let me know in the comments section down below what you thought. It helps the video do better. And this one was really long, so if you like these types of videos, I need to know by checking on the likes and comments, and subscribe if you're new, turn on noties. If you like the intro song, I'll put a link to it down below, along with a link to my podcast, The Scuffed Cast, or of course, you could use code Scrubby at the G Fuel checkout. It's a great way to get a discount on G Fuel, and I'd appreciate it. And last but certainly not least, if you want to check out any of my content on Spotify, I do have a show on there. I'll put that link at the top of the description. Feel free to go check it out. Or you can also check out a link to the merch store that's at the bottom of the description and go get yourself a hoodie. They're absolutely fantastic, and wowee, you should get yourself one. But on that note, guys, I think that'll officially do it for the video. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't get anyone pregnant. If you do, make sure they're hot, and I'll see you guys next time. I'm out. Peace.